It's March 21st, 2015, and I am in Washington State. I'm actually visiting someone right now that invited me up to their property. I'm just visiting for a couple of days. But I like getting outside of Portland. I'd love to be able to find a place to park where there aren't very many people. Maybe this year, so I can spend more time outside of Portland. For now, I'm experiencing the moment. This is all on private property. There are a lot of state parks, but this is also a season where more people are getting out and traveling. At least as the weather gets nicer, there's going to be more people, although spring break is probably already underway. It's good for people to get out in nature. And maybe this is an old service road. One thing that I pay attention to when I get outside of Portland is the shape of the clouds, the appearance of the clouds, and how different they look from the clouds inside the city. Whether someone is aware of the geoengineering issue, or whether someone's just looking at it from a perspective of air pollution, either from cars or from airplanes that are going in and out of the airport. You can see the difference. One thing I notice, one thing I look for are the sun breaks. If I'm in a more rural area, I'm going to get better sun from my solar panels than remaining in the city. You know, I don't need to be killed with hot sunlight, in July in the concrete jungle. Just because it's really hot for a few days doesn't make up for all the other cloudy days. I need regular sun if I'm going to be somewhat off the grid and be able to function outside of the grocery stores, outside of the coffee shops. And that's really what I want. I want more independence. And every year I keep growing. I look at where I was this time last year. I was coming back to Portland, and after staying with a friend for a little bit, I decided, that friend that actually moved out of Portland herself, I started in as early as April living in the back of my truck. And to me that was a big deal, to go out and feel like Rambo and be like, I'm going to live in my truck. I'm going to survive this shit, and to go through all the emotions I went through and to share them with you and take people's verbal beatings, attempted beatdowns of my spirit. And here I am living in a micro home on wheels, where I don't need to live in someone's house. In fact, I don't want roommates. I don't need those problems. Nor are you guys going to see me in the habit of asking other Portlanders for help anymore. There's a lot of reasons for that. But one thing you're not going to see from Alex Ansary anymore is asking for help from locals. I'm going to keep doing my thing, and the people want to view me and my work in a certain light. It's okay. Can't please everybody. And some of you have come to this channel for different reasons. Some of you are into the off-the-grid stuff, the freedom-based lifestyle commentary, discussions about relationships, news reporting, and some of you just appreciate me being who I am. Part of that is scoping out some of these spots here in the Pacific Northwest, which is my homeland as far as this current lifetime. Being born in Portland in 1980 and actually grown up in Oregon for a couple of years until I was 13 on 40 acres. And getting to know parts of rural Washington more and more the last couple of years. Some of the beautiful lakes. Now, society wherever you go. Wherever you go. In fact, in some cases you find the stupidest people in the country But also in the city, you can find the nicest people out in the country, in some cases the nicest people in the city. The only generalization that really makes sense to me at this point is that the majority of men and women are asleep, and they will feel threatened by those presenting truth. That's consistent wherever I go. It's only the minority of the local population that seems to show appreciation. What is unique, though, is that in Colorado, I knew far more of the neighbors than any other place I've lived in Oregon or Washington or anywhere else. The culture is slightly different in that regard. And never confuse urban Colorado with rural Colorado. Just like a thinking person would not confuse Portland with, say, a city like Dallas, Oregon, or Josephine, Oregon, or Klamath Falls, Oregon. It's not really a comparison, just because they're in the same state. Think outside the box of the state line. And think more about the differences in culture, urban versus rural. The fact of the matter is, though, I am an outsider wherever I go, and I always will be. I'm an outsider. I'm more of an outsider in my own hometown that I have a TV show on than anywhere else I've ever been. It doesn't matter that I do a TV show there. So, I'm rethinking my perception that I need to be in Oregon another year. It's nice to use that facility. I know some of you appreciate the show, but I don't need to be there to continue what I'm doing, and I've always known that. That's why I left in 2011. I just thought I would come back for one more time. Like that song says, one more time. Well, I had one more time on the dance floor. I'm good, man. I'm good. I don't know, somebody put something in my drink. I'm good. One more time. Look at that river down there. One thing that comes to mind is the beautiful natural earth green, the greens and blues that you see when you get out in nature. Emerald green, sky blue. You know, and those natural tones of red that you see in the Southwest. Natural color, natural life force, being free from electromagnetic pollution, being free from being around so much technology that really wasn't meant to interface with humanity as we've come to know it. That's all beautiful. None of those things are to be mocked or to be scoffed at. I found out that my Verizon internet does not work in locations like this. Some mountain passes they will, if they're within sight, I suppose, without a mountain blocking it from the tower. At some point, I'm probably going to look at better internet options for the money, depending on where I'm going to be down the line. The difficult thing about Craigslist is when I'm looking for places to maybe rent, I'm not super familiar with every little area in State Forest. So sometimes I ask people for tips, because some people have been watching my channel for years and they know this state like the back of their hand. I haven't got a whole lot of tips though. And I struggle with feeling disappointed. But it's okay, because I'm changing the way I'm thinking more and more, and I need to become less reliant on others to provide me with certain tips. It helps to have advisors, but really, A lot of things in this life you have to do yourself. If you rely on someone else to help you or build something for you, it's not the most independent way to go. And you know what? Some people mean well, but human nature is human nature. And I'm not confused at all as to why we live in the type of governmental structure that we live in. People have such a hard time getting along with their neighbors and their friends in some cases, that for a lot of people it's just easier to have a government, to have a police force, to have mayors and politicians create a grid for us so we can kick back, eat hot dogs, watch cable TV, play basketball, or play video games. That's how some people like it. Their way, right away. But for those of us on the more independent path, we have to think in our own lives, how do we become more independent than the last day? More free as we peel back the layers of the onion. Because it's not really about physical freedom. That's just a gateway. That's just a gateway to a greater spiritual freedom that I, Alex Ansary, seek within my own life, within my own spirit itself, a true spiritual freedom from the bondage and chains of this world. Nothing's going to limit me, and I'm not going to let anything stop me. It is only a false belief that I'm stuck in Portland. I'm really in Portland musing because I interact with the energies there in a pretty specific way. And those energies interact with me, and I would even say aspects of those energies even attack me for trying to do good in this region. And it's shown itself in my life in more than a few ways. And it's so obvious, it's obvious to some people that are watching this from a distance, how someone like me could be considered an untouchable or someone a part of a caste they don't want to get near. Whether it's from my online activities, my background, or just simply the fact that I'm on the non-materialistic path. But in my own search for freedom, those things shouldn't even faze me. You know, sometimes we can get so used to or so accustomed to certain stresses that we don't even blink. Sometimes it's good to be in a space where we don't blink. And sometimes there's cases when we should blink, when we should feel, when we should hear that little voice inside, when we should be sensitive and not let our feelings be blunted by the traumas of this world. Balance is what we need. Just like there's balance between night and day. We need balance in our world. There needs to be balance between men and women in order for us to live happy, fulfilling lives. It is unnatural to live the way most of us have been duped into living. Because while some are forced to live a certain way, in America we're in a pretty unique situation to where a lot of the slavery is voluntary. And the whole system, the police forces, the corrupt governments, the illegal wars, it's all held up by the hands of the slaves of this society. Those that fight the wars, and of course those that love those that fight the wars, that procreate children, and more humans just like them, that are operating, some could say, out of the reptilian brain. For those of us that are striving to understand what we're doing here on this planet, for those of us that are seeking to express ourselves in a more conscious, loving manner, especially those of us as men that are choosing to not follow in suit with the dominator blueprint, for those of us that are willing to sacrifice the pleasures of the flesh, we're on a different path. And I'll tell you what, the path that I'm on isn't a path that includes being afraid to go out and travel to rural lands. Even if you hear me show concern about, my safety and things like that, with some of the other things that I've shared with you, things about my last name, its origins, and how it's been hijacked by certain groups that are being run by Western intelligence. That's scary shit, especially when you have a history in the alternative media. It feels like a personal targeting. It takes guts to do what I'm doing and travel to some of the lands that I've traveled to. When people try to interject fear of going off grid or going out in nature, when people try to discourage such things, are they really being helpful? When people say, hey, you should become someone's slave, become my slave, work for me full time, give me your energy, are they being helpful? Are they being friendly? When people say they're your friends and they can't control their tempers, and I don't want anyone to think I'm talking about them specifically. I'm only talking about hundreds of people in the same breath. When people lose their temper and they go off and they start being accusing, are they really being friends? Are they really helping? You see, what I'm starting to realize is there's a price we pay when we expect cities, governments, counties, people, men, women, family, others to help us, love us, give us a hug, or provide a leg up. This is a day and age, and this is a world where you need to be able to go your own way with little to nothing. At the same time, I'm so grateful